Welcome to the Women in Engineering podcast. Today, I'm joined by Heidi Van Huel and Veronica Stednica from Dillon Consulting, which is a consulting company with operations all across Canada. Ladies, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. I'm going to start off by asking you to introduce yourselves and give me a little bit of background on how you got to where you are.
So I am Heidi Van Huel. I have been with Dillon for about almost 4 years now. I did my undergrad at the University of Waterloo. I specialized in water resources when I graduated, but I'm currently sitting as a civil EIT in the transportation and facilities service line here at Dillon.
So I'm Veronica Stednica. I took a little bit of a different path to get to where I am. I actually did my first undergrad at Western in the Bachelor of Administrative Commercial Studies. And then didn't absolutely love what I had done. So I actually went back to school probably like 6 years later for engineering at Western again. And so now I work at Dillon Consulting. I've been here for about 6 years now, and my position is a transportation engineer now. And yeah, I think that's it. That covers it.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Can you tell me a little bit about what Dillon Consulting does?
Sure. So Dillon is a proudly Canadian and employee-owned professional consulting firm. We specialize in planning, engineering, environmental science, and management. We also partner with clients to provide committed, collaborative, and inventive solutions to complex and multifaceted projects. So we're split into 3 service lines. I'll speak to the first 2, and then Veronica will speak to the last one. So the first one is communities. So communities include things like rezoning, site servicing plans, subdivision layout, etc. Dillon is a key player in providing expert advice, improving services, and we understand what it takes to develop and nurture healthy, livable communities with social diversity, economic vitality, and environmental sustainability. Our second service line is environment. So at Dillon, we are thought leaders on global disruptors such as sea level rise, changing weather patterns, and societal shifts and priorities. We understand these disruptors are putting pressure on governments, the investment community, and industry to evaluate current approaches for managing environment. So sustainability is no longer simply about environmental stewardship. It's about how we've govern our affairs and have the social license to operate. Our team has a proven track record and knowledge to not only foresee what could be coming on the horizon, but also to develop solution-based options to address client needs. Our team focuses on the 3 market segments that have aligned to our clients' most pressing concerns for the management of contaminated sites and environmental waste. So I just want to touch on a little bit as communities, environment, and as a whole. As I mentioned, I completed my undergrad with a specialization in water resources. So some of the things that include in water resources that I personally worked on were like culvert design, modeling, watershed modeling, and things like that, just to make sure our infrastructure can withstand climate change and all the different weather patterns that are getting thrown at it for the next couple of years. And Veronica, I'll pass it off to you.
Yeah, so our third service line is transportation and facilities, and this is actually the section that I sit in right now, as well as Heidi now as well too. And so our strength lies in providing clients with a wide range of specialized services, including strategic planning and policy development, systems and facilities planning, capital planning, facilities design, environmental assessments, and operational optimization. So what that means is we work on projects that include bridges and culverts, highways and interchange design, transit and rail, marine ports and harbors, airport infrastructure, electrical, building design, and the list goes on from there.
That's actually really interesting. So it sounds like Dillon does a lot of different and unique things that you maybe wouldn't expect coming out of engineering, but definitely very applicable to what we're learning right now. And so what makes you both excited to go to work at Dillon every day?
I can go first. So there's always, like you said, there's a whole wide variety of things that you can do at Dillon. So there's always opportunities to get involved in something different. For example, like I said, I started in the water resources service line, and then I transitioned to our highways section of transportation and facilities. And they very much encourage that at Dillon as well. If you want to give something a try, you can work with your advisors and the people who manage your workflow, and they can make that happen. So it's always very exciting that if you never feel stuck in a rut, really, you always have opportunities to get involved in something else and try something new.
Yeah. And so I think the biggest thing for me is, and I think a lot of engineers kind of feel this way as well, you love a challenge and you love to learn new things. And so that's what's exciting for me is every day I start my day, and I can't say there's ever been a day where it's exactly the same as the last one and I'm not learning something new. And if I ever did have a day where I wasn't learning something new, I'm helping somebody else learn something new. So it's a very collaborative work environment, and I love that.
That sounds great. And yes, you nailed engineers on the head with that one. So well, I know you touched about it a little bit, but what were your paths during school? So did you do co-ops, clubs, research, and then after graduation, and how did they lead you to where you are right now?
Yeah, so I can go first this time, Heidi. Because I went back to school later, I wasn't involved so much in the groups because I was busy working to go through school. But the one thing I did make sure I got involved with was co-op. That absolutely led me to the job that I have now. There used to be anyways a program at Western where it was a co-op where you where you kind of went through 3 different things, where you worked for a consultant, a contractor, as well as an owner. And it was one of the best things that I could have done because I got to see where exactly I wanted to fit in my career path then. And so I ended up in consulting from there. So I 100% recommend co-op to anyone. It's even if you don't enjoy what you're doing at that co-op, you're making connections, and that can lead to jobs in the future in any kind of engineering as well.
I can go next. So like I said before, I went to the University of Waterloo. While I was there, I tried to get involved in whatever I could. So a couple of the things I got involved with was I did a term as an undergraduate research assistant. So as part of that, I worked with a professor in the pavement design lab, and we were looking at pavement designs for airports. So it was really cool, that experience, just to work with the professor, work with the undergraduate students. While I was there too, one of the PhD students, one of the PhD students needed assistance with GIS modeling. And I didn't know the program, but that was a really great opportunity for me to learn that program with the PhD student. And also with this research position, they pay you to help with the research. So it was kind of like I was being paid to learn this new software. And as part of my water resources time here at Dillon, I used GIS quite frequently. So that was extremely useful. And it was also really great just to interact with professors and PhD students, and just the networking opportunities. It's always great to try to get those wherever you can. I also was part of a group called CAGS at Waterloo, which is the Civil Environmental Geological Engineering Society. And with that, I was somewhat involved with helping get speakers and things like that to speak to our group, which seems like what you're doing, Keith. So it was really great, again, for the networking opportunities. We got to speak to a whole bunch of different consultants and learn a little bit about the different companies across Canada, which was fantastic. I also was involved with a club called Bridges to Prosperity, which we did bridge design. So we did a pedestrian bridge design for different countries, and then we would go there and oversee the construction. I never went anywhere other than Canada, but I helped a little bit with the design of the pedestrian bridge. And that kind of helped me realize that I'm not really into the structural aspect of civil engineering. And I was able to tailor my learning, I guess, in 3rd year and 4th year away from structural and more towards transportation and environmental. Finally, I was in the Habitat for Humanity Club at Waterloo as well, which was all about building science. So part of that club, we were doing some research on how to make homes more affordable, but more energy efficient. Because with Habitat for Humanity, a little bit about that organization, I love it. It's the homeowners have to purchase their own home. So it's not a handout. Basically, Habitat for Humanity helps them purchase a home, and as part of that, they have to help build their own home. But once they purchase this home, so the home has to be cost effective for one, but once they purchase this home, they're responsible for all of the utilities and everything that goes along with it. So we were looking at how to make the building the home more cost efficient, but at the same time, how to make it more energy efficient. So they're spending less money all around. So that was fantastic, but also I realized that building science wasn't for me. So that helped me tailor towards, again, transportation and water resources in my third and fourth year. And again, as Veronica mentioned, co-ops were extremely important. So at Waterloo, you get 6 co-ops. So my first one was with the city of Mississauga and the traffic signals department. And from there, I was able to use the experience I got at that co-op to get a co-op at the Ministry of Transportation in the traffic section. And from there, for my next co-op, I was able to stay with the Ministry of Transportation, but I'm like, I want to try something different. So I went to the planning and design section, and from there, I worked with Dillon from an MTO perspective, which was fantastic. And then for my next 2 co-ops, I was able to apply to Dillon and be at Dillon for my last 2 co-ops, and then I was hired full time. So just the variety of experience you get with co-ops, and again, networking is invaluable. It's amazing.
I think honestly, the recurring trend I'm hearing is try things out and see if you like them, and network along the way.
For sure.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And especially like during school and like your first few years of work, even don't be afraid to try something different that's like totally off the wall and not something you thought you were interested in, because it might stick. And I mean, I always thought I'd be in bridges, and I'm doing road design. So
I thought the same. I think everyone who goes in, they want to design bridges, but it's not for everyone.
Yeah, and I think Western especially, like there's a huge focus on structural engineering quite often. So I think now you have a transportation class, which I'm excited about that.
I'm in mechanical, so I honestly would not know. Sorry.
That's okay.
I figured out early on that I didn't want to do the bridges.
No, that's fair.
But no, honestly, like just hearing that is honestly very helpful in the sense of try things out. If they don't stick, they don't stick. If they do, they do. And even if, for example, in Dillon, something doesn't work, there's also like, there's opportunities to try other things in the same company, which I feel like we don't always think about. It's the one job at Microsoft, like software engineering, like you go and you code, but there's also business jobs and other development jobs and other things you can do there. And sometimes we don't always remember that a company isn't just one role.
And I think that's another reason that makes Dillon a little bit unique, because I know some companies that like my friends work for example, you're hired into one role. That's the only role you do. That's the only person you work with. And if you hate that person and you hate that role, it's really hard. You have to transfer jobs. But with Dillon, we really try to avoid that. Like we very much encourage trying new things and working with different people, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
And
that sounds good.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think because our teams are so big, like when you work on a project, you have structural, electrical, highways, drainage, all working on that same project, that it makes it so easy to get to know people within those other disciplines, that it makes it very easy to transition and try something else for a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to just try new things, I think, especially when we're younger.
Yeah.
And so in your guys' opinions, what's some good experience for students to obtain during school based on different career paths? So if they want to do a PEng, a master's, research, academia, and do you recommend certain clubs or classes, societies that go along with that?
Yes, so the biggest thing for me was the co-op for sure, specifically when wanting to get your PEng as well. I think it's after your second year of school that you can start applying that work to your application. I may be wrong. but making sure that you have those different experiences like will accelerate you getting your PEng, and that goes a long way at a company to be able to have that as well. So that was the biggest thing for me.
And for me, like I mentioned before, networking is crucial, especially if you want to get into like a master's or a PhD. The one thing, like I mentioned before, my undergraduate research assistantship, that was that one opportunity that I really had to network like one-to-one with professors outside of the classroom, which was fantastic. And if you are going to do your master's or your PhD, you really need to have those relationships. So that was really good to do. Clubs also, I really enjoyed. And the clubs that I was part of, when I realized I wasn't really into the structural design aspect of those clubs, I switched to a different role. So I was treasurer for most of those clubs. And then that experience really taught me how to manage budgets, handle money. It was fantastic. And I actually used that experience to apply for another position I have within Dillon, which is called the Deputy Office Manager. And as part of that role, I'm managing office budgets and things like that. So that was really great, not only for my technical role here, but also for this extra role that I have as well.
I think too, like, sorry, going back to the PEng thing, I just thought of this, sorry. A lot, when you're filling out your application, there's, I think like a project management section on that. So when you're new to work, that's very hard to actually get any kind of roles where you're actually being a project manager or anything like that. So what I would recommend, I know Western does offer a business class with the engineering, I think it's a required course. If you can take more than that business class, that will help you greatly once you actually get into the position, because if you know about cost management, you're more likely to get on projects where you're able to do that work and actually put that towards your application as experience then.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot of, if you're interested in something, do something applicable. And the PEng note about business is really helpful because I didn't even know that you have to do project management, but I'm also in second year.
And it's not a lot of, it's not necessarily that when you become a PEng that you have to do project management, but it seems that a lot of people do lead towards that way. So a lot of your projects will be multidisciplinary projects where somebody needs to manage it, and quite often, yeah, seems that like professional engineers are also project managers.
I mean, that's good to know. If you want to go into PEng, that's an option. So what's something both of you wish you knew before entering your first job or co-op in the industry?
Go ahead, Heidi.
So for me, from a technical perspective, learn CAD at least for civil engineering, because I use CAD every day. Veronica, who's now like a PEng and is moving more into a project management role, I think you use CAD every day still. It's crucial to our designs. So I know in university, at least for the University of Waterloo, we only did one course first year for CAD. And I really wish I learned a little bit more before I started my first co-op, but it was really good during my co-ops to learn as well. So that's one thing that I wish I knew before entering my first co-op.
And I don't think it's necessarily just CAD, because depending on what type of engineering you want to go into, there's probably different programs that you would use. So any additional help or learning that you can do with any of those programs before you get your job is going to set you up so much better. It'll be a lot less frustrating for you as well.
And it looks great on a resume too. Like when we're rolling through resumes, if they see that on there, they're instantly interested.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things for me is I do a lot of presentations. And so during school, I was kind of the person that kind of sat back and I'd let somebody else take that role of presentations because I get nervous, and like I'm nervous doing this even. And so still today, like I still work on that skill. So anything that you can do in advance to help yourself try to learn to be more comfortable in giving presentations, I think is a huge thing. As well, you get things thrown at you on the spot all the time when you're working. So like you can be working down the hall and somebody's asking you about something and they need something from you right away. I learned this isn't so much what to do before school, but this is something in your job once you start. I carry a notebook everywhere I go because you will have things thrown at you out of nowhere, and to be able to keep track of everything, it's so difficult. So time management and organization are key items.
No, that's some good advice. I appreciate it. Yeah, just it's great advice and something that I will definitely take note of for my first co-op. And so what's some advice, just general advice you would give to students starting their first job in the industry?
Something that I think is really great to know is just don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, whether that be in terms of health and safety, saying no if you're approached with unsafe work, making sure you have enough information and support if you're given a new task that you've never done before. And if you're too busy, just say no or speak up to try to help prioritize your workload, because that's one thing I know that I struggle with still too, because once you're in the industry, your first job, you're really excited. So you just want to say yes to everything to get as much experience as you can. But if you do that and you're overwhelmed, you're going to miss deadlines and you're not going to provide the top quality results that you can do just because you're overwhelmed with all the tasks you have. And that was one thing that I found really scary, just advocating for myself. But once I've started to do that, I feel like my work quality has gotten way better because I'm able to have the support I need, the time I need, and I feel a lot more comfortable and have more resources to do what I need. Also, sorry, you can go, Veronica.
Oh, I was just gonna say, did you mention about like saying it's okay to not know something?
Exactly, yeah. You don't know what you don't know. So I think that was the hardest thing too, because once you get into the industry, people will ask you like, what do you want to learn? What do you want to do? And quite often the answer is, I have no idea yet. So at Dillon, at least, we have a program where when you come to Dillon, you're assigned an advisor. So for example, Veronica is my advisor. So if I don't know that I need to learn something, but Veronica does, during one of our advisor sessions, she can go, hey, Heidi, I think this is really good for you to learn. Are you interested in it? But yeah, it's totally okay not to know something.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that goes along with that too is you could be working with a new project manager and they don't know what you know. So they could ask you to do a task and it's something that you've never done before. If you just say, yes, okay, and you go back to your desk and you sit there and spin your wheels and not have a clue what you're doing, your project manager is not going to be happy. You've blown a budget, the task isn't completed to what they've expected. So the best thing you can do is, if you don't know something, say you don't know. It doesn't look bad. That project manager is going to be able to help you get the resources that you need in order to be able to complete that task to the required standard then.
Another piece of advice that I would give, like I graduated in 2018, so a few years ago, but one of the things that I found really useful was to apply to be an EIT right away and to write my ethics exam as soon as I could, because when you graduate university, you're still in the writing exam mindset, so I feel like it's a lot easier to study and just write it, get it out of the way as soon as you can.
As well as updating your resume. So I believe at Western they have services to help with your resume. So I would start that right away, even before applying to your co-ops, to have that extra assistance. They know what they are looking for on your resume. So start that right away and then continually update your resume. After you've done a co-op for the summer, update your resume with that job and list maybe 4 projects that you worked on or something, just that you have that information and it's there and it's fresh. Because when you come back like so many years later and you have to update your resume or you have to update your engineering application, it's gonna suck. So basically just keep track of everything as you go. It's not always the funnest thing to do, but it will help you in the long run.
And like just adding on to that, like Veronica mentioned before, like I think it's your last your last 12 months of experience you can put towards your professional engineering application. So I'm actually going through that right now. And I really, really wish that I had done that when I was doing my co-ops, because I'm having a really hard time remembering what I did in those last 2 co-ops and trying to put it down. Thankfully, it was at Dillon, so I could talk to the people who I worked with. It's like, hey, do you remember what I did then? But lots of people don't have that luxury. So if you do a co-op and you know that you're going to put it towards your PEO application, just make sure that you write it down right away.
Yeah, and I think you actually like need like a sign off from like an advisor or supervisor while you're at that position. So it's a lot easier to do it during that co-op and get it done then, instead of going back to them 4 years later and being like, hey, remember me? So
yeah, the person who was looking after me during my co-ops is like partially retired. So I feel really bad. I have to say, hey, can you provide your signature for this? I know you're retired, but
Yeah, so basically all I'm hearing is be proactive, and it's okay to not know everything.
for sure.
yeah, absolutely.
And I think with engineering too, we get so in our heads of, yes, like we know how to CAD, we know calculus, we know all these things, and it's very hard for us to swallow that pill of there are things we don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot we don't know, and until you start your job, you don't really realize just how much you don't know. And I always find it interesting because engineers quite often are the people that like, oh, I'm right, oh, I'm right. And so I actually like that about work, is that it's actually challenging, that you have to kind of fight for what you believe is the right solution sometimes, and that's always a nice thing.
That's pretty much all I have for the question. So is there any final advice you'd like to share?
Like we touched on before, just be open to opportunities. There's some things that you feel like you really don't want to do, but just try it, just to be sure that you don't want to do it. Also, it's really nice when you're talking to people, like it's nice to be more open to opportunities than closed off, because if you say no to an opportunity, you might not get that opportunity again. I know that goes back against what I said before, but like just try something if you have the time. If you have I guess if you have the time, just try something. You might like it. You never know.
Yeah, and just to be able to add that diversity to your resume as well, because you could be in a position that at some point, maybe your company doesn't have any work for that role all of a sudden, but if you have some diversity in some other items that you're able to actually transfer your skills over to that, so that you can keep busy and working, that's huge.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both for your time today as well.
Not a problem.
No problem at all. Thanks for organizing.
And to all of our listeners, I hope you have a great rest of